叫施美仪，今年25岁。Hello everyone, my name is Melanie Gale C, 25 years old from Manila. 大家晚上好，我叫马美君，我今年20岁，我是来自中国城的。Good evening, Soler. My name is Kate Au, 20 years old, your candidate number 2. 欢迎大家，我名叫蔡宏宇，24岁，从马尼拉。Good evening, everyone. My name is Julian Chua, 24 from Manila. 大家好，我今年是金美，今年24岁。Good evening, Soler. My name is Audrey C, 24 years old from Canada.
When you think of ethnic groups in the Philippines, you think about the Igorots, the Bajaos, the Ilocanos. But if you take into consideration the Philippines as a whole, there is one ethnicity that has been here before the Spanish era, which time and again has been important for the Philippines: the Tsinoy.
Subsistence technology of the Tsinoy ethnic group predates to their scale of importation to the Philippines, creating quality, lower-priced commodities and manufactured goods while amassing a population large enough to colonize inbound land areas through the perimeter of the Philippines coastline. With a growing scale of domestic production of the Tsinoy ethnic group as drivers of the Philippine economy, households earned elevated levels of prosperity along with the empowerments of political will, creating for them an efficient logistical settlement scheme in the heart of Mandaluyong City for them to extend their population further and culture further within the metro and subsequently causing further urban agglomeration within the region. The Tsinoy ethnic group, upon their sprawl to key geographical locations, has brought with them their scale economized goods to capitalize on the prolific land areas where capital markets and consumption patterns thrive, such as their delicacies and goods or services for the market's basic necessities that result in dominant and unequivocal corporate competitiveness to ultimately empower their own prospects of posterity. So a brief background of the Chinese Filipino ethnic group or the Tsinoy ethnic group. Number one, they are one of the largest overseas Chinese communities in Southeast Asia. Number two, approximately 1.5 million Filipinos have pure Chinese ancestry, which is around 1.8% of the Philippine population. Number three, Chinese Filipinos play a leading role in the Philippines business sector and dominate today's Filipino economy. So the social anthropological development of the Chinese Filipino ethnic group follows a certain pattern which, at the timeline, which is the first era, the sporadic migration era. The second one being the diaspora mass migration era of the Chinese. And the third era is the modern era of today's Chinese-Filipino social anthropology.
So as for the sporadic migration area, which happened around the 600 to the 1100s, we have the Chinese civilization. From 600 to 800 AD, we have this thing called the Golden Age from Disunity, wherein Li Yuan, Li Shimin, the reconstruction of China from warring periods, nomadic colonization, and peasant revolution. After a few years, until the years 1960 to 1127 AD, we have the commerce and internal animosity, wherein which happened was the regional disunity of the Bei and Nan Song, imperialism of China, and the return of the Mongols. Another dynasty that happened in the sporadic era was the Tang Dynasty. Two important people, namely Li Yuan and Li Shimin, play an important role in this era. Li Yuan Under Li Yuan happened the reconstruction of China from disunity and tyranny, and the control over Asia's eastern plain by use of complex militarization, inclusive taxation, and bureaucracy. Whereas Li Shimin, what happened under him was the golden age of China. This golden age, what happened was the economic proliferation through trade with Central and Southeast Asia and cultural revival from art like poetry, dance, and sculpture. Also, what happened under Li Shimin was Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, literature, architecture, astronomy, mathematics, and aristocracy. This is the main part of the cultural revolution under the Tang Dynasty, under Li Shimin. Between the years of 960 and 1127 AD happened the commerce and internal animosity under the Song Dynasty. Again, two people played major roles in this dynasty. One would be Zhao Guangyin, Beisong or North Song. What happened was the reinstitution of Confucian principles in the north by establishing a strong bureaucracy and military. Also happened the Jin dynasty, the Juchen tribes, which is the Juchen tribes' overthrow of the Liao kingdom during the fall of the bureaucracy in the north. Also which took place was the assault of Genghis Khan and the Mongols and the destruction of the Song fleet in Canton. Next important person would be Gao Zong. Under him happened the mobilization in capital Linan to maintain defenses and imperial authority from the north. Also was the proliferation of commerce, which was strong ships and compass for maritime travel, printing and powder, trade of silk, celadon, wheat and tea, education, Chinese vernacular and Confucian teachings, and art, Buddhist and Taoist artifacts, lush pagodas, poetry, musicals, etc. It all happened in the south. Next would be imperialism under Gaozong, which is the tributary system with Central and Southeast Asia. Also, there was the mentality that foreigners to China are barbaric.
Chinese-Filipino socialization. Arab-Filipino merchants and Chinese merchants exchanged goods through the seaports of the southwestern China, which is Canton and Fukien, and the coastal towns in Luzon, Mindoro, and Sulu. Chinese trade goods include silk, porcelain, ceramics, colored glass, beads, ironware, and tea. While Philippine trade goods include hemp cloth, tortoise shells, pearls, frankincense, myrrh, exotic animals, and yellow wax. During the 1850s to the 1950s, the diaspora era happened, in which Chinese civilization, the fall of the Qing dynasty, and mass migration happened. Under the fall of the Qing dynasty were the Taiping Rebellion, Chinese Civil War, and the Boxer Rebellion. Whereas the mass migration occurred, the avoidance of poverty, famine, and persecution at the time of civil war and drought. Also happened the Filipino civilization, in which the foreign occupation happened. Which occurred
Foreign occupation ended. Tuloy mo lang.
in which the foreign occupation ended, where also happened the KKK and the Spanish-American War.
During the diasporic era, the Taiping Rebellion gave way during the 1850s to the 1864. The radical political movement at the time, known as communism, and the religious Christian upheaval ravaged 17 provinces and took an estimated 20 million lives and irrevocably altered the Qing dynasty. Leaders Hong Xiquan and Feng Shunyan founded a new religious group, the God Worshippers Society, Bai Zhongdi Hui, among the impoverished peasants of the Guangxi province to rebel and overthrow the Qing dynasty. Hong then proclaimed this new dynasty the Taiping dynasty and assumed the title of Tiawang, or Heavenly King. Their creed to share poverty in common attracted many famine-stricken peasants, workers, and miners, as did the propaganda against the foreign Manchu rulers of China. During 1899 to 1901, the Boxer Rebellion happened. Growing economic impoverishment and a series of natural calamities forced the Yiheguan to mobilize militia groups in the northern provinces of northern China and Beijing, while burning churches and foreign residents and killing foreigners and all suspected Chinese Christians. Boxers, as dubbed as foreigners, or formerly known as Yehiguan, righteous and harmless fists, peasant society of China, practiced certain boxing and calisthenic rituals in the belief that these practices and rituals made them invulnerable, and began an uprising in an attempt to overthrow the Qing dynasty and the privileged Westerners of China. During 1927 to 1950s, the Chinese Civil War finally broke out. The Nationalist-Communist Civil War between the Western-supported Kuomintang, KMT, or Chinese Nationalist Party, and the Soviet-supported Chinese Communist Party. After Sun Yat-sen's death in 1925, Chiang Kai-shek, as Commander-in-Chief of the National Revolutionary Army, set out a military campaign alongside the CPC to form the first united front to wipe out feudalism and end the dominance between communist and nationalist ideologies. Within the KMT, this caused a separation and a clash between nationalists and communists alongside the CPC, resulting in oppression and massacres and ultimately culminating in a long civil war. The long march of the CPC and KMT, independent resistance against Japanese occupation at that time, rendered the CPC under Mao Zedong's leadership to be victorious, resulting in CPC, the communists, to control mainland China, and the KMT, nationalists, to exile to Taiwan. The great leap forward under the CPC government resulted to millions of casualties due to famine and overexhausted overproduction.
Filipino civilization during the diaspora era. In this era, three main events happened here. First is the KKK uprisings. Next, the Spanish-American War in 1898. And then, the establishment of a Philippine government. Under the KKK uprisings, here happened the nationalist propaganda or revolution and the shift from regionalism to nationalism. Under the Spanish-American War of 1898, here happened the Treaty of Paris, which is in Paris, and the mock battle of Manila. And when the Philippine government was established under the American colonization, here happened the Tidings-McDuffie Act, or the Philippine Independence Act of 1934, and what was so-called the puppet government under the United States. During this era, also happened the Chinese-Filipino socialization. Herewith was the social division of the Chinese-Filipino ethnic group. From the Spanish period, privileging the Chinese as middlemen or drivers of the economy and domestic production, to the American period, which privileged only the Principalia, or the educated elite. Which also happened the social characterization. There were two social characterizations at that time. First was the Chinese mercantilism, and next was the Filipino westernization. Under the Chinese mercantilism, we had Eastern ideology, Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, meritocracy, aristocracy, and bureaucracy. Also, the residuals were populism, nationalism, and capitalism. Under the Filipino westernization, we adapted the Western ideology, which was Christian Catholicism, capitalism, liberalism, and democracy. Herewith, the residuals were populism, nationalism, mercantilism, animism, and Islam. Next, during the 1970s to the 1990s, we have the pre-modern era. Under this was the recognition of the People's Republic of China as the sole representative of the Chinese government, the revision of all existing nationality laws leading to easier acquiescence of Philippine citizenship for Chinese, especially those living in Taipei and Beijing, and the transfer of Chinese schools, governed by the Ministry of Education of the Republic of China, to the jurisdiction of the Philippine government's Department of Education, DepEd, replacing Chinese education with Filipino education.
In the modern era, Chinese-Filipino ethnic group demography and geography, boundaries, territories, communities, languages, cuisine, and capital resource endowments. Popular stereotypes: Hokkien,ese, Lanlang or Lannang from the Fujian province, Cantonese, Ketalang from Hong Kong or Guangzhou, Bistek, Bisayang Incheck, born from Visayan, Mindanao, blood from Cebu, Tacloban, Bacolod, and Davao. Chinese Mestizo, Ton Tartaras, is 25% or below Chinese blood. Contributions to the Filipino national identity would be the tradition of Mano Po, as well as the capitalist attitude, diversity, and resources. The main issue of the Tsinoy ethnic group are the identity crisis, the trade barriers, the cultural assimilation/discrimination, and the education. Evidence of Chinese cultural influence in the Philippines. In food, we have pancit, a noodles flavored with seafood and or meat or vegetables. And for example, comes from the Hokkien pansi, meaning something that is conveniently cooked, usually fried. Lumpia, the Chinese egg roll, which now has been incorporated in the Filipino cuisine, even when it was still called Lumpiang Shanghai, indicating a frying and pork filling. In fact, the Chinese influence to Filipino cuisine goes way beyond food names and restaurant fare. The use of soy sauce and other soybean products is Chinese, as such the use of such vegetables like pechay, toge, mustasa, and still bear their own Chinese names. Similarly, many cooking implements still bear their original Chinese name, like Shanxi or Turner. Chinese-Filipino organizations. There is one organization that stands out among the rest that serves a special role within the Chinese-Filipino community. The Kaisa Heritage Foundation Incorporated was registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission as a non-stock, non-profit corporation on November 12, 1996 by 15 Filipinos of Chinese descent who wanted to preserve the culture and heritage of Chinese in the Philippines. Upon the initiative of the Kaisa para sa Kaunlaran, the Kaisa Heritage Center was built and opened in 1999. Initial funds for buying of the log and building the center was provided by Dr. Angela King, and the rest raised from the Tsinoy community. The foundation is primarily active in the operation and maintenance of cultural and research center, particularly the Kaisa Heritage Center. Its purpose, among others, are to provide the framework to bring the Tsinoy community to meaningful participation in this country's development and sustainable progress, to perpetuate, preserve, learn, and seek inspiration from the rich cultural and historical legacy of Tsinoy in the Philippines life, to be a lasting repository of a historical and cultural legacy of the Chinese in all aspects of the Philippine life. The Foundation's programs now focus on the following areas: Bahay Tsinoy, GPNC Memorial Library, Research and Data Bank Center, and the Awat Keng Auditorium. The major thrust of this foundation is to establish an educational and research center as repository of the tangible and indelible imprints and influences of the Chinese in Philippine history, culture, politics, and society. In conclusion, the Chinese Filipino ethnic group have become firmly integrated into the majority through historical process of their immigration and mobilization. As they accumulated resources through the years of organization in the Philippines to establish themselves as both a political and economic elite in society, they have also assimilated into the Philippines as early as and in coexistence with the Tabon man. The Chinese Filipino are not only a substantial market for rent-seeking political entities, but economic growth prospects for the entire Filipino archipelago. The prominence of the Tsinoy ethnic group in the Philippine society and culture today cannot only be seen demographically, but more profoundly geographically as well.